spend some time on the injuries. But it was funny to walk into the post-game press conference room last night, and Mike Vrabel was not a happy camper. Not a happy camper. Comes in and out. So there's the way it's set up, the press conference interview room where we talk to Vrabel, where we talk to Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, maybe one other player at the podium. Yesterday was Kevin Byard, and then since we don't go in the locker room anymore, they'll bring a bunch of other players out into the hallway to speak with us while all this is going on. So we're waiting. We're waiting for Mike Vrabel to walk into the press conference room. And he comes out in a bit of a huff. Says somebody is saying something to him in the room behind the press conference room. So he goes back in a huff, comes back out, goes back in again, comes back out a third time and says, basically, this isn't going to go very long today. 7 or 8 minutes, I'd bet the under. So he's clearly pissed. And we're all looking around, the collection of us, Titans media, who attend these games and who cover the games and attend the post-game press conference after every game. We're just like, does he know he won? The hell's his deal? And so we get going, and it's pretty par for the course. And this is why coaching seems like such a suffering to me. It really seems like a miserable endeavor. Because even in a win, your job is to go back to the people who have just busted their ass for you for 60 minutes, and in the case of the odd Seattle game or an overtime game, 60 minutes plus, and say, hey, we won, but it's not good enough. Here's X, Y, and Z on what we need to improve upon, and I expect it to be done by the time we hit the practice field on Wednesday. Your job is to consistently demand more, no matter the result. So I understand why he would be miserable after that game, because there was a lot of stuff that you would like to see them clean up. I mean, you're talking about penalty yardage in a way that they don't normally commit those kind of penalties that allowed the Colts to continue drives, sustain drives when they shouldn't have. They should have put that team down much easier than they did yesterday. Now, it doesn't matter because the result at the end of the day is a win, and that's all you care about. It's a divisional win. It's a critical win. You put the Indianapolis Colts, who everybody who's a Titans fan despises with every fiber of their being, you put them in an 0-3 hole. And I sat 2 seats down from the Colts GM Chris Ballard yesterday. I can tell you he was not thrilled with the outcome of that particular result as well. But to watch Mike Vrabel come into the post-game press conference room, that kind of pissed off. You go through the list of what he may be upset about. In fact, we put it on a poll. What's Mike Vrabel most pissed about after yesterday's loss? Because there's a handful of things. The penalties we discussed that allowed the Colts to sustain drives, that allowed, things like an Ola Adeni sack. What would have been I think it would have been his 2.5 yesterday, because he finished with 1.5 sacks. And, of course, he was on J. Martin Ramon this morning, seemed to be having a good time. Now that he's found his role in this Titans defense as well as on special teams. But he had a sack wiped off the board because Chris Jackson got an illegal contact penalty. And his turnover differential is horrendous. So at this point, as a team, and I'm not putting this at the feet of Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill has been the source of a lot of these turnovers. Yesterday it was exclusively Tannehill interceptions plus the Nick Westbrook-Akina fumble in a critical situation that probably pissed him off. And it's just an accumulation of things to where he walks out of the post-game press conference pretty pissed off, slams the door on his way out onto New York. And even though the Jets are 0-3 and completely hapless looking again yesterday, my God, we'll talk about the New York Jets at greater length this week. But for Mike Vrabel, he seemed to be the person who was most dissatisfied with the way that the Tennessee Titans won that game yesterday. 615-737-1045 is how you guys get involved over the course of this morning. What did you like about the way that they won? Because they did find ways to win, even if it didn't look the way that you thought it should look, or even if you thought that they should have played a cleaner game, and you have higher expectations for the defending AFC South division winner from 2020. You have higher expectations for this team. The coaching staff certainly does. The players will tell you that as well. But it does mean something to be able to accomplish that because it's the first time it's happened. It's the first time for Mike Vrabel, now in year 4 as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, that he's beat the Indianapolis Colts in front of a home crowd. A jam-packed home crowd yesterday, too. I was curious to see if there would be any drop-off yesterday, given the way that Arizona went in week 1 coming home. It's exciting after Seattle, but you never know. And they had legitimate home field advantage yesterday, much to their delight. But you'll hear from Mike Vrabel, Taylor Lewan, Ryan Tannehill, Kevin Byard, and Derrick Henry over the course of today's show. But for me, and I wrote about this last night at A2ZSports.com, what I thought was the best result for them outside of getting the win was not only the way that they did it, because it was multifaceted, the way that they were able to beat the Indianapolis Colts, but the thing that they needed the most and that they have needed the most over the last calendar year, they seem to have found in pass rush. This is such a big deal that the Titans are finding ways to effectively scheme pressure. By the way, without their high-priced free agency acquisition, one of the biggest signings of this past offseason, Bud Dupree, who's a game day active player who dresses out and then doesn't play a snap. Because, and I asked Mike about this last night, all he said was unavailable. In fact, I'll read the exact quote. It's all of like 5 words. Unavailable, was there for an emergency. That was the entirety of Mike Vrabel's answer on Bud Dupree. Not a single snap from him, and you're getting contributions from guys across the front 7 in ways that allow Ola Adenyi to look like the best free agency signing that the Titans had this year. So we'll talk about that at great length. I'll give you some stats on the pass rush. I'll tell you why their win was so improbable yesterday, given what they were up against and, frankly, the hole that they put themselves in, and still found ways to scrounge out that win. We'll talk about it coming up next. Your phone calls as well. Kenston will lead us off on the other side. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
We got full reaction to a big rivalry weekend in Tennessee coming your way as the Vols return from Gainesville and we recap Titans and Colts.
And the ding-dong of the week is locked and loaded. Let us know yours.
Today, starting at 1 p.m. on 1045 The Zone.
was that you were consuming Titans football. I'm sure you enjoyed the result, but have some questions about how the result came to be, and we'll certainly talk about that over the course of today's show. Mike Vrabel himself, we spoke about it, that they have a lot to clean up today, and also the injuries. I don't know if this has been talked about yet today. I'm sure it has been discussed, but you saw Paul Kaharski report that Rashad Weaver has a fractured fibula at this point, or a broken fibula, rather, so he will likely miss an extended amount of time. I'm not sure what the extent of the break is or what the recovery process will look like, but a broken bone in your leg is going to cost you a considerable amount of play time. We spent some time on the pass rush, and I'll give you some stats on how effective they were in creating pressure on the quarterback here in just a second. But first, let's take some phone calls. Kenston is in Memphis. He's been waiting patiently to talk about this defense. What's up, Kenston?
Hey, what's going on, Buck, man? I just want to shout out the defense, man, and say this was a game that last year, had we played, we probably would have lost. I think that, you look at the probabilities of winning, turning the ball over 3 times, 3 for 12 on third down, holding them down in the run game. This was a team effort, but the defense led the way, so shout out all the Shane Bowen haters. And my big thing is I'm wondering about, man, where is Jeffrey Simmons? When Bill, and I know he's had good stats, but he kind of is doing what he did last year, makes a play here and there, and then he goes missing for large parts of the game. I'm waiting on him to have that, to be the Pro Bowler and All-Pro they told me he was going to be, and not disappear for big chunks of the game. But shout out the defense. Shout out everybody they brought in on that side of the ball, the big names and the little names that have been signed. The defense played well. Let's clean it up next week. Let's get to 3-1 and keep going. Thanks, Buck.
Hey, hang with me for a second, Kenston. So two points on that I want to ask. I want to follow up. Are you not a Shane Bowen hater? Were you not an original Shane Bowen hater?
No, from jump, man, I've always been Jimmy's and Joe's over X's and O's. I've always known it's the players, not the plays. He called good plays last year. He just didn't have the players. I'm always going to go side with the guys that get paid for their job. They know more football than the fans do.
Okay, and then point number 2, Jeffrey Simmons. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. He has been incredibly disruptive. You guys on the edge are cleaning up these sacks because of the way that they're creating interior pressure. Are you box score scouting an interior defensive lineman?
No, I'm actually doing the opposite because I've been having this argument with people saying, he's got 1.5 sacks in 3 games. And he does. And the stats look good, but then they say, he's getting double-teamed a lot. Well, so does all the great defensive linemen. But my thing is, for them, from the moment he's been drafted, for how good he was supposed to be, and probably will be, and just like last year, I feel like he goes missing for too many portions of the game before he makes another play for him to supposed to be this, next great defensive tackle coming up in the league. I think he needs to be more consistent in the plays he makes and not just the plays he makes for others.
Thanks for the call, 615-737-1045. I think that's a ridiculous statement that he just made. So what is defined as making plays? This is the thing that I think people get caught up in interior defensive line play specifically, because making plays is winning your one-on-one matchup. Making plays is finding ways to beat those double teams. And so far through 3 games, Jeffrey Simmons has been hugely effective doing that. So making plays does not, tackles for loss are great. Sacks are great. Pressures, quarterback hits, all of those things that show up when you go check Pro Football Reference or wherever it is that you're looking at box scores after the fact. You like to see numbers on the stat sheet for the players, but that's not how I'm judging Jeffrey Simmons' play, nor is it how you should judge Jeffrey Simmons' play. Look at what he is doing to win his matchups, to force runs outside, to cause the quarterback problems in the pocket. What does Coach Dave McGinnis call it? The guard-center triangle or the guard-center cylinder? Whatever you want to call it, Jeffrey Simmons is picking these guys up and throwing them around in a way that allows Danico Autry to make plays, allows Ola Adenyi to make plays, allows Harold Landry to generate a career-high, this is from Next Gen Stats, career-high 12 pressures in the Titans' win over the Colts yesterday. He got pressure 37.5% of the snaps he played, which is the 3rd highest in a game in the Next Gen Stats era.
He has 1.5 sacks through 3 games.
Are you talking about Jeff?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Aaron Donald has 2.
This is a ridiculous argument that he just came on here, or just a ridiculous statement that he came on here to say.
Big batted ball, too, yesterday.
It was huge. I mean, there are plays being made. And again, if you want to generalize, that's fine. But what you're saying is uninformed. That is not accurate analysis in any stretch of the imagination. And not just because they won. The defense is playing well. But to his point about the Titans losing a game like that under normal circumstances or under different circumstances, past circumstances. Mike Herndon had this stat. Mike Herndon in his retirement, who's doing better research.
We need to get him on the show.
He's retired. I don't know if he's doing interviews.
We need to confront him about it. No, I told him when he retired, we're still going to get you on the show, right? He said, yeah, no, that's cool.
Do you want to just call him like right now? We should just call Mike. I think we should do that live on air. Do you have his number back there?
Yeah, he has like a real-life job.
No, damn his job. Clearly not, because he's out here citing, turnover differential stats for the past 5 years. So while I read this stat to the people, you call Mike Herndon, and we're going to berate him about what the hell he's doing and what is supposed to be the free time that he's spending on his business and his child. We'll see if he picks up. I think Mike listens during the day, so we'll see if we can't smoke him out, because clearly he's out there. But anyway, the improbability of winning this game. Mike had a great stat during the game. Teams with a -3 turnover differential, which is what the Titans had yesterday, right? 2 picks and the NWI fumble. Teams with a -3 turnover differential are 19, 202, and 1 as a total record over the past 5 years. The Titans made it 20, 202, and 1. They found a way to win a game with a -3 turnover differential. So it's not just that Titans teams or years past, they would have lost that game. No, damn near every other team loses that game. 19, 202, and 1. Because Mike Vrabel opened his press conference, and I don't think we had the audio of that, but Mike Vrabel opens his press conference yesterday basically saying, the improbability of the way that we just won that game, it's so difficult to win a game the way that we just won. As Mike Miracles, at Mike Miracles on Twitter, pointed out on social media yesterday, because he's supposed to be retired, and I hear we've smoked him out. Michael.
Yes, sir. Yes, Buck.
Put the needle down. What are you doing?
I can't stop. I can't stop. I'm retired from writing the long-winded, overly in-depth articles that took me way too long to write. But I'm not retired from tweeting. So
no, which I respect, but the tweeting that you're doing is basically the long-form article over the course of the 3 hours. Like, Mike, who the hell is citing turnover differential records over the last 5 years in retirement?
I don't know. I think that's just me, I guess. I'm a bad retiree. Very, very bad retiree.
You're sick. Okay, so since I have you here, what did you like most about the way that they won yesterday outside of the sloppiness?
Yeah, I mean, it was they tried to lose that game every which way they could, and I felt like every bounce almost went against them. But I think the thing that really I'm starting to feel more comfortable with is the defense, honestly. The defense is making plays. They're getting off the field. They're not turning the ball over, which is the thing that you kind of would hope would start to come. But that was actually something that they did really well last year while being terrible at every other aspect of defense. So it's kind of flipped this year. But if you're gonna be a better defense, then starting with getting off the field on third down is a really good spot to be, and they did a much better job of that this week and the week before after a bad week one that kind of sent everybody into relapse mode of, oh God, it's last year again.
We're like 22 and a half hours removed from kickoff yesterday. How many times have you watched back a week 3 game?
I've only watched it just the one live time so far. So I am retired. I would normally be on viewing number 3 by now.
How many times did you watch through preseason games in retirement?
I did watch the Falcons game multiple times.
You're disgusting. You're disgusting.
Game multiple times.
Every snap.
I'm not even gonna lie.
You're sick. All right, get the hell out of here. Go spend time with your child and your family and your business.
Okay.
At Mike Miracles is where you can follow him. An addict, an absolute addict. Turnover differential stats from the not like in the last season, the last 5 years. Mike is digging up this kind of research. I love him to death, but he has a problem.
He was already laughing when he answered the phone. He was listening
Because he knows what I'm talking about. It has to. So we'll bring Mike, who's retired but not really retired, back through on occasion. But it's a fantastic stat, and it speaks to the way that they were able to find ways to win. Now, it was almost a perfect circumstance among the contributors that they got meaningful snaps from. NWI, Chester Rogers, Cam Batson, Jeremy McNichols, Ola Adenyi, guys who are, maybe fans would consider them on the fringe. I think that at least in the media, we look at them a little differently because we know just because they're special teamers or not a core starting member of the offense or the defense, you know that these guys are going to have to put together plays if they're going to be on the active 46-man game day roster, which makes the Bud Dupree situation that much more curious, but we got time to talk about that. In the meantime, what Mike brought up was something that I had a question for Kevin Byard about yesterday, because they do have a bad turnover differential so far through these 3 games, including the Tannehill strip sacks that aren't on Tannehill, the interception that was on Tannehill yesterday that he put right in Darius Leonard's belly, even though it looked like Tommy Hudson and Jeremy McNichols kind of ran into each other on the play, and then, of course, the one that went off Chester Rogers' hands, which is not on Tannehill. Regardless of how the turnovers are coming, they're coming at a much higher rate on the offensive side of the football, and the defense isn't creating them. So Kevin Byard yesterday, he was asked basically about, the defensive performance, because they have been much improved. Don't look at total defense. Look at the third down percentage. They allowed the Colts to only convert, and let me make sure on my handy-dandy stat sheet. Yes, 3 of and I said sheet, not the other word. I got a little ahead of myself. Sorry, Lucas. 3 of 12 is all they allowed the Colts to be on third down. Now, this is against a completely immobile Carson Wentz, who may not be that great under normal, healthy circumstances, but 25% of their third downs was all that they allowed the Indianapolis Colts to convert, and they have been getting progressively better since allowing north of 53% in week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. 615-737-1045 is how you guys get involved. What did you like most about the way that they won yesterday? And also what concerns you about how they struggled, even though they did win the game. That matters. But Kevin Byard is basically asked about the defensive performance, and he goes on to talk about taking last year personally, and then you'll hear my question to him about why it is that they haven't been able to generate turnovers at the rate that they were accustomed to a year ago.
Huge. Last year when we played them at home, we didn't play good enough, especially, going to that second half, they kind of got away from us. So really good. I think the defense, we had a really good performance, strong performance. The offense turned the ball over 3 times, which I'm sure they don't want to do. But for the defense to be played good in the red zone and, force a lot of field goals, only let them score 1 touchdown, I think was pretty strong. Still got a lot of stuff to clean up, but definitely encouraging. We won on division, so it's a great day.
AB, you heard all the chatter in the offseason about, how high-powered this offense was going to be and how they'd kind of carry you guys to wins. For the defense to kind of take over the low when the offense kind of struggled to get going, what does that show about what this defense is capable of?
Yeah, we take stuff like that personal. Obviously we know that we didn't play well last year. We knew coming into this year that was going to be the expectation. But I kind of understood, how training camp goes, when some guys can't practice. Offense is going to take a little bit of time to gel a little bit. So defense is going to have to play good. So, it proved today. It's just one of those deals where, it's just about being complimentary. When the offense isn't playing well, defense got to step up. Defense don't play well, offense got to step up. That's just team football, and that's what we believe in. So, like I said, it was a good win today.
What's your Nick Westbrook, he's going in the mix, so go ahead.
You guys are used to the offense turning it over kind of at the rate that they are, but it's also been kind of a situation where you guys haven't quite created turnovers the way that you have. Are those opportunities there when you go back and watch the film of these games? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, sure. I almost thought I had an interception at the end of the game. I was real close to it, but, it's just one of those deals where when we on the sideline, we're always communicating, always talking about, it doesn't really matter what the offense does. Of course, we want them to score points every time they get the ball, but we understand it's not going to happen. But when, the defense, they get a turnover, we have to go on the field and expecting, okay, where are we going to get? We're going to get shots, screens, stuff like that. But we understand that just because they get a turnover and they got the ball, they don't have to score, no matter where they get the ball at on the field. So, like I said, I'm pretty proud of the defense and how we handle those turnovers.
That's Kevin Byard speaking with us after the game yesterday. And so you look at the turnover differential stats right now. The only team that's Guess the only team that's worse, Lucas. We'll play a little trivia.
Only team that's worse than the Titans?
In turnover differential this season.
Oh, I'm just going to throw out the Jets.
They are one better than the Titans in turnover differential.
Only because of Zach Wilson's 4 interceptions.
Correct. The Jets are -5. The Titans are -6. I will narrow it down for you. This other team also exists in the AFC South.
Oh, the Texans.
No, it's the Jacksonville Jags.
Okay.
-8.
Gave up a pick 6 yesterday against the Cardinals.
Well, they also ran back a kick 6, and I'm sure we will address Cliff Kingsbury when we get to winners
Spoiler
and losers
alert,
of
he
the
is my
football.
ding-dong of the week on Blaine and Mickey.
Jesus. I mean, you got to be kidding me. That was a 68-yard field goal attempt. Please tell me that Cliff Kingsbury is good at his job, even though they clown-suited the Titans in week 1. It's for another day. For another day. We'll save it. But, yeah, the Jags are the only team worse in turnover differential right now than the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, there will be a battle of the NFC East contenders or pretenders or however you want to look at the NFC East as I watch a stat on First Take about both the Jets and the Giants being 0-3 to start the season. Of course, the Titans will play the Jets this upcoming Sunday, but it is a problem right now with the rate that the offense is turning the ball over and also that the defense is not yet finding ways to replicate their turnover success. Now, from my standpoint, I was kind of coming in with the expectation that they would be worse at turnover. I mean, they could only get worse at turnover differential, right? They were the best in the league last year at turnover differential. So that's not any kind of a shocking statement. But turnovers they're not as much a product of coaching or scheme, or they can be a product of good coaching because of the way that they coach how to force turnovers in practice, tip drills at practice, things of these nature. But you understand that turnovers are more left up to chance than probably anything else in the sport. So I expected them to be worse, but I also didn't think that the offense was going to take a nosedive with how hard it has been for Tannehill to hang on to the football, given the kind of pressure that he was under. And we'll talk about the offensive line because Run Left had a big day yesterday, and Taylor Lewan had some words to say about how his last experience at Nissan Stadium went and how he was able to perform. I'm sure the audience would love to hear from him. But they have to find ways, if nothing else, to keep just to keep their hands on the football. And it starts with the protection more than anything. The protection was sound yesterday. Ryan Tannehill did get sacked on the first drive of the game. It's the third time consecutively that the Titans on offense have started with a 3-and-out. And, of course, the collective groan that came out of Nissan Stadium yesterday when they went 3-and-out, but not only 3-and-out, that third down was a sack on Ryan Tannehill. It was not the kind of start that you expect from a team that has the kind of talent that they do. But for the defense, I think that they are playing at such a higher level, a more cohesive level than the unit that we saw a year ago. And Lucas, you said you found a stat on Christian Fulton for the season. I'm going to read this Jim Wyatt stat first, having to do with Christian Fulton and how good he has been on defense. According to Pro Football Focus, he allowed only one catch for 5 yards yesterday against the Indianapolis Colts. He was targeted a bunch. Hell, Carson Wentz's first target was in the area of Christian Fulton. It was quickly broken up. He came back. He left hurt. He left limping after a big third down stop, a breakup on Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman, the receiver, lands on Christian Fulton's leg. He has to come out of the game, still finishes strong. What is the statistic that you have for me on Christian Fulton's season through 3 games?
Same stat, but yeah, for the season, also courtesy of our friend Mike Miracles. Christian Fulton's cumulative numbers through 3 games: 5 catches allowed on 18 targets. That is a 27.8% clip for 88 yards. That includes the coverage bust against the Seahawks in week 2, which he was lumped into. If you take that out, according to Mike, it's 4 catches for 4 for 17 for 20 yards. So 4 catches allowed on 17 targets for 20 yards. That puts him number 1 in overall corners in completion percentage allowed, according to PFF.
And your defense is reflecting the fact that teams are throwing away. They're still testing him, but I don't know how much longer that will go on as long as he keeps up this level of play. Christian Fulton has been a revelation on the outside of that defense. The pressure has contributed substantially as well, and that looks to be a more collective effort that's allowing the defense to have the kind of success that it is, certainly on critical third downs. So we'll continue this conversation coming up next. I want to talk about the offensive line. We're going to play you some sound from Taylor Lewan yesterday post game as well, because they had a big game. It was not even a Derrick Henry takeover game, even though Derrick rushed for north of 100 yards.
Made some statement runs too.
Yeah, we'll talk about Julian Blackmon as well coming up next, because he was excited to tackle Derrick Henry, and I think that excitement faded fairly quickly. Taylor Lewan sound coming up next, and an interesting situation between Derrick Henry and the Colts starting safety. On the other side, I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
This is where the Titans play. 104.5 The Zone.
all of the sport get tossed, and it wasn't even a stiff arm. It's just Derrick shouldering the holy hell out of a grown-ass man and seeing him fly through the air, bounce off him, rock'em sock'em robots. It's such a great call from Mike Keith. But it was, and we'll talk about Derrick Henry in the passing game here in just a second, because he did contribute again. And there's a trend that I really like about Todd Downing as the offensive coordinator with how they're getting Derrick Henry involved. We'll talk about Taylor Lewan here in just a second as well. 615-737-1045 is how you get in on the action. But Lucas is dying to give you a Derrick Henry stat that he has since discovered. What is it, and who is it from?
Every week we're going to update where he's on pace to get to 2,000 yards, right? To repeat 2,000-yard season. Nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever even eclipsed 1,500 after a 2,000-yard season. Derrick Henry's 353 rush yards through the first 3 games of the season. What's that divided by 3? He's rushed for 117.7 yards per game. What's that times 17? 2,000.
Just straight up 2,000.
He is on pace for exactly 2,000. Not 2001.
That's sick.
2,000.3.
Wow. God. Okay. So Derrick Henry watch every Monday? We could do that every Monday.
Yes.
I concur.
We'll update this every Monday.
Yeah, you'll hear from Derrick Henry later on in the show as it relates to his quarterback, because the quarterback had a big rushing day yesterday as well. He didn't even know it when CBS Sports asked him about it. But we'll talk about that before Mike Vrabel's press conference at 12:30. Remember that Austin Burlage of Power T Tape will be here at 11:20, and we will touch on the Vols and the Gators before we turn our attention back to the Titans. Cameron Clark compliments Lucas on that phenomenal stat. Where did you get that from, by the way? Or did you just do math?
That was just me. I was just sitting there last night on my couch wondering, wonder what he's on pace for at this point.
See, this is smart that we workshopped the math bit before we brought the math
Yes,
bit
no,
air.
did not do it live. This was premeditated and done 3 or 4 times before we brought it to the air.
Did you tweet that out?
No.
Well, that's stupid.
That is stupid.
I'm having to teach you on how to get clout.
I'm going to do it right now. I was saving it.
You should learn. Then maybe one day it can be you getting smacked across the face with a keyboard in a Bussin' with the Boys hype video that I saw last night after they won.
It's very well done.
Yeah, okay.
The change in your face after getting hit by the keyboard was the key there.
Yes, props to Jack McPherson, who is the video editor and one of the producers for Bussin' with the Boys. He sent me a message on his Instagram that said, "Still love you, Buck," even though it says "Buck you" from my teeth flying across the screen after the visage of Will Compton hitting me in the mouth with a keyboard. But we'll talk about that later on. In fact, let's hear from one of the co-hosts of Bussin' with the Boys, because he had a really, really strong performance yesterday. Taylor Lewan, under much scrutiny, under much criticism, getting out of his own head. That side of the offensive line, and really the offensive line collectively, had a very, very stout performance. Critical first downs were created because Taylor Lewan was able to spring Derrick Henry and allow him to create rushing yards. I saw him cover up Darius Leonard several times in allowing Derrick, who, as we said, did not outright take over a game like we've seen him do in AFC South games past, but was just good enough to have the same kind of effect that when he's rolling, the Titans have. And a big part of it is because of the offensive line. So it was curious to see how fans were going to react to Taylor Lewan, because, of course, they announced him coming out of the tunnel before the game. And he, again, now it was mostly cheers because the game had not started. He had not given up however many sacks he gave up. I think it was 2 total credited to him against the Arizona Cardinals. But before the game, mostly cheers, but also some very, very notable boos as he came out of the tunnel. And Taylor Lewan was asked about this yesterday. Well, in fact, it almost came up a bit unprompted. And he started out by saying, now you won't hear in the clip because my camera, this is not intended to try and skew things against Taylor Lewan. It's just at the time that I happen to hit record on my phone. He started this out by saying, I love Titans fans and I love the city of Nashville, but ...
I cruised back on the field, and our PA announcer, I think his name is Matt, just got the job. First game, right? Announces that I'm back in the game. And these fans go and start booing. Now, here's the deal. I don't know what that's all about. Like I'm coming back from an ACL, 10 months. Like it's a difficult process, and yeah, I wasn't playing well at all. That was a really hard game to get over emotionally, mentally. That light went out. Like that's how it went. The lights just went out week one. That's a perfect metaphor for all of them. It was a really deal. You guys don't have to be able to use any of this on cable. But like it was. Man, I really wish I could have articulate how difficult that was. You know, it was just hard to hear the fans after 7-8 years of as much as I tried to do for the city boo. When I came back out there, that was I remember looking over at Ben and he looked at me and smiled and shook his head, and I was like, damn, that's crazy how fast they just turned, and I'll never forget that. And it was a difficult 24 hours, a difficult 36 hours, a difficult 48 hours. And,
That's Taylor Lewan. Now, he also talked about the recovery for the ACL and what that process is kind of been like. And, I think that's a very human moment. Now, do people give a damn about humanity from Taylor Lewan and how he feels about being booed? Probably not. I'm sure many people feel like, for example, Kroenke in the chat on Twitch, on Zone TV, where you can view and hang out with the show in studio, all 4 of the shows in studio, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Kroenke simply says, pulls out the Kleenex box, cry me a river, Taylor. I don't care how people feel about how Taylor Lewan feels today. I think that most people's analysis of Taylor Lewan is largely stupid because they are incapable, for intellectual purposes or otherwise, to separate the player from the person. You can dislike Taylor Lewan's personality. You can dislike the fact that he's a talkative left tackle. And you can also understand that when he's out there blocking his ass off for Derrick Henry, he's a top 5 player on this hugely talented team. If you cannot separate that for yourselves, then, you're doomed to do this constant circle of criticism, play better, podcast less, blah, 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 and I can do nothing for you. But I did think it was interesting the way that he kind of had a crystallizing moment thinking, oh, they don't actually care about me. They just care about how I play on the field. I think that may be the first time Taylor Lewan has had that kind of crystallization, because most athletes understand that principle coming in. We will let's sneak Michael in really quick before we have to go to break. Michael is in Nashville. He wants to weigh in on the Titans left tackle. What's up, Michael?
Hey, so listen, I am incredibly disappointed. I've been a huge Taylor Lewan fan, and I don't know that you could have told me anything he said or did that would have changed my mind about Taylor. But listening to his words just then, this guy has got some issues. Look, whether he knew that or not, if he didn't know that people, the reality of things, then he's delusional. And regardless of the case, he just shouldn't have spoke, because he made himself look really bad. Players have those thoughts. We all know they think things negative about fans, but who else do you hear speaking that way?
Yeah.
Not to mention a guy we just paid $80 million, committed to $80 million. So, he's bringing this on himself. And I think one day he'll look back and realize that.
Oh no, it's a great point, Michael. And here's the thing that kind of stands out to me, because while I understand what he's saying, like it's a totally human thing for Taylor to say. But let me tell you this, okay? Because I'm standing in the tunnel below Nissan Stadium when they trot Taylor out there and he's speaking to the media. And it's always a risky proposition. God help Titans PR, because I imagine that when he goes, when he starts to wind up and he goes, let me tell you something, I just imagine the body language of every Titans PR person to just kind of slump. Because what Taylor did yesterday is completely human, completely rational, but also, while everybody else is talking about a team win, Taylor Lewan is talking about how he personally feels and how that affected him emotionally. And while I understand the humanity of it, I also understand that he benefits absolutely none by speaking it into existence, because that's how people turn the narrative back onto you. And that's how you prolong the conversation. And that's how we end up playing sound bites on Sports Talk Radio. I'm grateful for the content. I'm also looking at that and saying, uh-oh, here he goes. We'll come back and we'll talk about Derrick Henry on the other side, because the performance, the collective team performance, was impressive, if a little clunky. We'll also talk about the Vols as well coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans made a huge statement in the AFC South against the Colts.
The Colts gave the Titans all they had, but the Titans had more. Your final score, Tennessee 25, Indianapolis 16, as the Titans get it done again.
can hear me. Because, okay, Lucas tells me now he can. All right, very good. So Jonah Clement, who is watching on Zone TV, has been arguing about the lack of push that the offensive line's getting. And I want to make sure that Jonah can hear me when I say, well, it's clear that he doesn't know anything about what the Titans did in the ground game yesterday, because multiple times, particularly early in that game, even though the runs aren't going for 10 or 12 or 15 yards for Derrick, and even though 114 yards is, I would almost call that a pedestrian Henry performance, would you not? The offensive line played as good a football game, specifically in the ground game, as I have seen them play all year. So if you would like to showcase your ignorance by telling everybody that you didn't actually watch the game yesterday, or you're talking about something that you didn't actually pay attention to, because of course we know that Jonah Clement is breaking down the X's and O's of the offensive line, you are welcome to do so. But that also gives you permission, if you're going to put such ignorance in the Zone TV chat, to roast you, because that is as dumbass a comment as I've heard all day long. And I've seen a lot of dumb stuff on the internet in the last 24 hours. The offensive line played their best game of the season yesterday. Even though the rushing total isn't as monumental as it was in Seattle, that is more by the gifts that God gave Derrick Henry than it is by anything else. Derrick Henry had a good game yesterday. The offensive line had a good one. As Spencer says, it's not safe in here. It's true. Once you comment, that means you're fair game, fair or foul. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved throughout the course of the show. So let's talk about Derrick Henry, shall we? But let's not talk about the running game. I want to talk about this emergence of Derrick Henry, Titans running back, dual threat? Question mark? What, Lucas, Lucas just whispered something to my ear.
I want to play the call again. I want to play the Mike.
Oh, the Darius Leonard call.
The 14-yard, yeah.
Oh, would it make you happy to hear the soul stolen from Darius Leonard?
Yes.
Okay, do it.
Play fake. Tannehill going to screen it to Henry on the left. He's got to block 45-50. 45, he runs over Leonard and is taken down at the 40. Ha! Ha! Rock 'em, sock 'em, robots. He laid the wood to him.
The Coach Mac laugh, it tickles me.
That will be a drop on this show, by the way.
Oh, that is, of course, Titans Radio's call of a second, and what was the down and distance? Let me make sure that I have it correct. The 2nd and 8, Ryan Tannehill screen pass to Derrick Henry for 14 yards that stole the life, if not the soul, of Colts linebacker Darius Leonard. And in fact, Lucas went up and dredged the internet for Derrick Henry's top 100 NFL players of 2020 that the NFL Network does in that lull, in that dead period before training camp begins or while training camp is going on to generate content. Derrick Henry, I think, was the 4th best player in the NFL as voted on by his peers, and so they always put together a highlight package and commentary from players that have played with, for, and against, in the case of Darius Leonard, Derrick Henry. And Darius Leonard's commentary was telling from this video, back in August? In August of what he said about Derrick Henry on the NFL's top 100 list.
How big is he? Let's see. Just think about LeBron. LeBron is about, 6'8", 260 pounds. Derrick Henry is about 6'4". There's no way I'm getting him anything lower than 250. That's a guy that you would hate to play against twice a year. You know he's getting the ball. You know he's going to run right at you. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's able to absorb hits, and fourth quarter, he's still going.
In 2020.
So, we can do without the commentary from Big Voice
in
Guy.
2020.
Wait, what do you mean? That's you. That's your future. When we get fired as a show collectively and this whole thing goes up in flames.
It's a very lucrative occupation.
Yeah, I was about to say, you mock it now, but just wait. When you're the next voice of an Arby's commercial, Lucas.
No, those guys got it figured out.
I'm going to remember this moment.
No, but that was Darius Leonard. That's his commentary. I mean, he popped up several times throughout that video.
And listen, Darius Leonard did not go throughout the course of yesterday's game without making plays. Of course, he had the interception of Ryan Tannehill. Darius Leonard was active. It's just the Titans found ways to effectively cover him up and free Derrick Henry. But before I tell you what most intrigues me about Derrick Henry's game through 3 games, let's go to the phone. 615-737-1045. Joshua is in the borough. He wants to talk about Derrick Henry. What's up, Josh?
Derrick Henry's development from the time he got drafted to now has been really impressive. And I noticed yesterday at the game they were able to get him involved in some screen action.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they can continue to do that with his ability to locate the ball, bring it in, and get extra yards, I think that could be a big boost to our overall offense and help those receivers get going.
Oh, no, Josh, and I appreciate the call because that's the observation. You stole my thunder. Next, he's going to steal my job, and then Lucas and I will be doing voiceover work much sooner than we anticipated. But, so, this is the second game in a row where Derrick Henry and Julio Jones have tied for the amount of receptions that they've got in a game. 6 against the Seahawks, 3 apiece for Derrick Henry and Julio Jones against the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. And we'll expand on the Julio Jones conversation at noon, so stick around for that.
Just as we all predicted.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, but this was foreshadowing because you'll remember when talking about Todd Downing as the new offensive coordinator in Tennessee and hearkening back to his time in Oakland, I remember, and I don't have the stat in front of me, and I wish that I would have thought to bring it to the show today so we could talk like we actually know what we're talking about. But Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words, he had the stat about how often Todd Downing in Oakland involved his running backs in the passing game, be it by check down, screen, or otherwise. You're seeing that with Derrick, where, when they're running coverages and the defensive coverage starts to sink back because the receivers are breaking into their route concepts, Derrick Henry runs a quick, what do you want to call it? It's not an out route. I don't even know what the proper route terminology is, but just goes forward for like 5 yards, turns around, sits down, catches the ball, first down. They did it with McNichols. They're doing it with Henry. And the thing that was missing from the Titans offense last year, good as it was the regularity and the execution of a consistent screen game. Now, I don't know what to attribute that to. In fact, I would hope, and I'm not going to be able to attend in person the Mike Vrabel press conference today because obviously it's at 12:30 and we'll still be doing the radio show. But I'm going to text Teron Davenport or Rex Road or somebody to ask about their improvement year over year in the execution of the screen game because that's what's been missing since 2019 from Derrick Henry's versatility as a player. And now it seems that they've found their foothold in that regard. We will we'll take your calls coming up next. Austin Burlage of Power T Tape is going to join us in that segment as well. We'll talk a little bit about the Vols in Florida. Charles in Nashville will lead us off on the other side as we continue this conversation about the Titans' win over the Colts. That's up next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Eagles and Cowboys go at it in an NFC East Monday Night Showdown. Tonight, starting at 7 on your home for Monday Night Football. 104.5 The Zone.
upsets over the weekend. I mean, my God. I think I may, Lucas, proclaim, since I don't have a college football allegiance, like I know I went to Indiana, but I'm not going to sit there and lie to people and say that I'm a diehard Indiana Hoosiers fan when I just started watching them that one bowl game against Tennessee, and that's because I had a bet on the line with David Reed about shaving my head. So I think every year I should declare my allegiance for a different college football team. Like I'm going to, 4 weeks in, bandwagon off somebody.
Yeah, you really know how to endear yourself to Southern college football fans.
What do you want me to say? Like I'm going to lie to people?
Root for your alma mater, man. Come on.
Why? It's just
how these things work. You're stuck with who you're stuck with.
That's not true. I'm not beholden to your rules, all right? Just because you want to be tribal down here in SEC football country, that does not mean the rest of us have to live our lives that way.
Who do you want?
I want Arkansas.
I do like Arkansas.
I love Arkansas. So now for the season, now watch, they'll lose every game after this. For the season, I think I'm going to declare myself an Arkansas fan. Anyway, we'll talk about the SEC in greater depth tomorrow. And Austin Burlage of Power T Tape will be with us here in just a second. But in the meantime, we've been talking about Derrick Henry and his involvement in the passing game, not just what he's able to contribute on the ground. Total yardage matters just as much as rushing yardage, even if that doesn't necessarily help Derrick Henry get to 2,000 yards rushing in back-to-back years, even though he's on track to right now. Flat out, 2,000. Lucas did the math. I didn't double-check it because I'm bad at math. Anyway, Charles is in Nashville. Wants to weigh in. What's up, Charles?
I tell you, I was at the game yesterday, and every time I see Derrick Henry with a full head of steam, it is like watching a freaking Yeti run downhill with a helmet on. The guy is a beast. In fact, Yeti coolers ought to give him an endorsement because every time the big man hits you, he's going to put you on ice.
Yeah, no, it was something, Charles. Thank you for the call. Like, I thought about tweeting that out because at any time Derrick Henry would get like 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage yesterday, you would see the fans in the stand immediately jump to their feet, right? Because they're just waiting. Everybody is waiting with great anticipation for Derrick Henry to break a long, whether it's a touchdown run or just a long gain. The entire stadium starts to surge as soon as he gets like 5 yards down the field. It's such a cool thing. And I saw this observation made by our buddy Ryan Hurd, a musical recording artist and songwriter Ryan Hurd. Also a big Michigan fan. I wonder how he's doing lately. But Hurd, I saw tweeted out, does anybody else, and this was this morning, does anybody else feel like Derrick Henry is just starting to get going? And it honestly feels that way, which should make Titans fans very, very happy. Now, on the other side of things, I don't know how Vols fans are feeling today. So why don't we check in with Austin Burlage as we do each and every week, except for last week, because Austin is a new dad, and there are priorities, even though most of us would not believe it. There are priorities outside of football. And so congratulations to you and your family, Austin. That's fantastic.
I appreciate that, Buck. Yeah, I thought she came. My daughter was born at like 9:30 in the morning on Saturday, and then we got to watch a 56-point blowout win, and then Tennessee got off to a hot start against Florida, and I thought I cracked the code. I thought, this is it. She's our good luck charm, and the curse of Florida has been lifted. That turned out not to be true, but still, my daughter is a darling, and I love her very much. So thank you.
Well, absolutely, we're incredibly happy for you. Now, it's funny that you bring up good luck charms and children, because I went to the Titans Seahawks game obviously to cover that a week ago, and there was a gentleman who had I don't know, it wasn't a newborn, probably like 8 months old, and they took the little guy to the game, and they said every game that we've been to, every road game that we've been to prior to him being born, the Titans have lost. So now he has to come to every road game in the future because he's clearly good luck. And I'm looking at this little child who has no idea what's going on. And it's 70,000 people in Seattle screaming. And I'm like, you're taking your children to this thing? But whatever.
Loudest stadium in the country, right? I mean, but hey, that's the rule now. You just got to be there. Hey, can we take a quick detour, speaking of Titans, and just how good did you look in that suit yesterday, man?
Buddy, I looked great.
What was that, Buck Burgundy out there? I mean, that was phenomenal.
That's exactly what that is. So listen, we're living well nowadays, and I just started having getting suits made for me, and there was some fun had at my expense because it did look a little bit like I was trying to model my game off like the Joker, but I looked damn good in purple.
Oh, for Rex Road, it was the what's the McDonald's character, the big
Grimace.
purple thing? Yeah, Grimace.
Yeah. So, well, I thought that was just him trying to be cute with a fat joke. But listen, it took me 20 minutes to help Rex Road set up that joke because he has been going through, 2 decades now as a sports media person. I understand Twitter hadn't been around for 2 decades, but this idiot doesn't know how to copy and paste pictures off of the internet, save them to his phone, and post them on Twitter. It was fascinating to me to watch him be an 85-year-old man. Anyway.
You did not have to do it to him, Buck, but you did, and we appreciate you for it.
You're damn right. Game days are game days for everybody, not just the players on the field. All right, let's talk about the Vols. Because the first half, you're right, they got up, they got the lead. It was impressive the way that they were doing it. Hendon Hooker was operating with efficiency. I thought it was brave of Cooper Mays to kind of gut it out the way that he did, but glad that they kind of, that they got him out of there basically in preparation for Missouri, which is going to be a critical game for this team in the SEC. How were they able? Let's start with the first half. What did you see them doing that allowed them to generate that lead?
Yeah, so 2 things that I saw that I really liked. So one thing that Tennessee, obviously in Heupel, going back to his time at UCF, has been known for is obviously the pace. We've seen the graphics on Twitter, fastest offense in college football. And even Heupel said in some press conferences, right, like, we can go faster. And even some players have said, we think we can be faster. So it's all been predicated on how fast can we get plays off. And their pace was what we have come to expect. But what I really liked is on a couple third downs, they actually slowed it down, used the whole clock. And that's what happened on the Tyon Evans screen pass for the touchdown. That was a 3rd and 8, I believe, from plus territory. I want to say about the 44-yard line. And they got to the line quickly like they usually do, but then actually took some time, saw what Florida was trying to do, signaled in a play, got what they wanted. Now, Evans did make a guy miss. Maybe it could have been blocked a little bit better, but I really liked that. And they did it a couple times. Unfortunately, backfired in the second half when we had 4th and 2 and used too much time and had a delay of game and then punted. It's a separate conversation. But I really like that in the first half. Not everything has to be at a million miles per hour. Get in the play that you like and go from there. Number 2, I really liked Florida. Most teams will end up playing a lot of man coverage based on the split of Tennessee's wide receivers when they go spread. So Tennessee did a lot of man coverage beating concepts. And I think we saw that particularly in the first half, if we're talking first half, like the Javonte Payton touchdown, that was purely man. And the defensive back got his eyes in the backfield because it was a stacked formation. So he thought, based on how the receivers came out, it's going to be a run, got his eyes in the backfield, just ran right by him, freed him up for a touchdown. Saw another couple things, like we used Jalen Hyatt in motion. It's harder to play man when you have a lot of motion running around. You can't run across the field with them. So those were 2 areas where I really felt like Tennessee in the first half had a good amount of success.
Yeah, no, and it was clear and obvious to everybody. Now, I don't know how close attention you pay. I know you're studying the tape, but I don't know how close attention you pay, Austin, to the post-game press conferences, because I was laughing. In fact, Lucas, can we play that Dan Mullen sound for Austin Burlage? Have you heard this of him complimenting Tennessee?
Yeah, is this where he kind of passed us on the head a little bit?
Yeah, can we play that for the audience? Austin has clearly heard it, but I would like for Vols fans to experience what appeared to be pity that Dan Mullen was kind of patting his opponent on the head.
Had to go play an excellent Tennessee team. I think you look at them, the physical group, physical on both sides of the ball. Some good athletes. Their quarterback, I thought, played really well today, hitting some shots, creating big plays. They're an explosive type of offense, and you can see that they the improvements they've made in 1 year, and what Coach Heupel's doing with them, and how those guys play. And our guys had to come out and play hard for 4 quarters. And, in the first half, I thought a couple mistakes here and there, and we went in and challenged the guys at halftime.
So that's Dan Mullen going on and on after being hugely complimentary. That doesn't make anybody feel any better. Although I saw people touting it as some kind of moral victory Saturday on Twitter.
Yeah, I was actually disappointed, and I don't want to be the negative guy. I mean, I think there are areas where you can look at Tennessee and be optimistic about some things that they did, but it's hard for me to feel like Tennessee is really that much more improved. I mean, we lost by 12, I think, last year to the Florida Gators, and they were ranked 13th. So this year we lost by 24. I think Pruitt's first year we lost to Florida by 26. I mean, so the gap to me, I mean, at least on the scoreboard where it counts, is just as wide as it has been the last few years, and probably going back to that 2016 upset at home. And along with that, I mean, you know, yeah, credit to Tennessee for making plays, but like we just talked about, I mean, one of their touchdowns was a coverage bust. And so, you know, and we didn't score at all in the second half. So again, some positives to take away from it, but at the same time, you know, I was kind of, I didn't like the quote personally, but that's just me.
Austin Burlage of Power T Tape is here with us, as he is every Monday, except on the Mondays after he has a child. Talking about the Vols and the Gators at Austin _Burlage is where you can follow him.
Austin, you mentioned seeing a lot of single-man coverage when the Vols are spread out, like on that Javonte Payton touchdown against Florida. Obviously, there's been a lot of those open looks. Josh Heupel's gotten credit for scheming up those open looks, all the overthrows over the first 3 weeks. Have the majority of those, in your mind, just come from straight-up Tennessee receivers just beating guys in single-man coverage?
Yeah, I think – so that's a good question. So I think Heupel does some things to get those guys open, like a lot of rub routes. So that's one thing that we saw with, the Jimmy Callaway drop, right, was a play called mesh where Cedric Tillman kind of came and picked a guy off. So he got a guy open by the way the routes are run against the man coverage. So I don't know if it's a case. To me, it's not so much a case of Tennessee wide receivers like beating guys one-on-one per se, but I think the scheme works like their man-beating concepts. I mentioned earlier, like getting Jalen Hyatt moving. I think we've seen Hyatt not be too effective down the field, which has maybe been a disappointment this year, but found a way to get him the ball in space against Florida, which was nice to see. So I think from that standpoint, it's been a lot of scheme on Heupel's end of like, hey, I've got my menu of these are my man-beating concepts, and I think he did a good job calling those, and that, not to pick on Callaway, obviously that drop was big, but then there was another fourth down where it was a man-beating concept with a rub route, and we hit Peyton he made a great catch on fourth, and I want to say 5. So yeah, I don't know if Tennessee is just like torching D-backs or like running away from guys to get open, but I think Heupel's done a good job in that respect.
Well, and as he mentioned last week, it doesn't make him feel any better because the plays aren't being executed at the rate that he would like for them to be executed. So, I don't think anybody would. And you brought up the Jimmy Callaway drop on fourth down where there's just nothing but grass in front of him. I mean, he's got it. He's got it if he makes that catch. And it becomes I don't know how much different of a game it becomes, but it certainly makes Vols fans feel better about the result as we sit here the Monday afterwards. But this upcoming game against Missouri, Austin, it's an SEC East game. It's a beatable opponent. It's an opportunity for them to really get some solid footing under them. Is this the most important game of their season when you look at the season at large?
Yeah, in my opinion, I would say so. I think you kind of always looked at Florida as being probably a game you weren't going to win. And you're looking at the schedule going, and trying to define, like I think we did on the show, right? Like what would be a successful year?
Right.
I think if you look at like Missouri, South Carolina, and Kentucky as winnable games, in addition to, the Bowling Green win, Vanderbilt, and South Alabama, even though they're 3-0, and have Jake Bentley, who has beaten the Vols before. Then you start to look at it. Okay, for first year, maybe you have some optimism about what you can get to. But yeah, if you drop one of these games to Kentucky, Missouri, or South Carolina, then it starts to get really depressing in terms of what the record might end up being. And it's not completely, you don't want to make excuses, but at the same time, like you'd like to have your full complement, your full roster for a game like this. And I know Heupel was at his press conference not too long ago, said he didn't really know the status on Hendon Hooker. I think everybody is kind of not too optimistic about what Joe Milton can do, especially with the way the game ended against Florida. Obviously, Cooper Mays, warrior, dog, but is he going to be okay?
Yeah, but also ankle. Yeah, warrior dog, ankle.
Yeah, ankle. Maybe the other ankle. You never know.
Not great.
But yeah, I mean, so definitely a game that you really would like to have if you're Heupel, but at the same time, can you do it with the roster that you've got?
Austin, I want to ask you about a late situation in the first half that could apply down the stretch in some of these close games when Tennessee gets the ball driving down the field. Late in the first half with a couple of timeouts and not a lot of time when they forced the fumble and went down to try to kick the field goal. I know a lot of people were frustrated because you felt like there was an opportunity to call a timeout, maybe give yourself one or two extra plays. But I wonder, in your opinion, does calling a timeout there and trying to stretch out that drive time-wise almost come to the detriment of this offense that in that moment, after forcing a turnover, wants to move quick and fly down the field and find some points out the gate? Do you think calling the timeout and slowing things down may actually hurt them there? Maybe that's why he didn't choose to stop the clock?
Yeah, potentially. I don't have too big of an issue with the end of the first half and how it played out. I mean, we got an opportunity for a field goal. I think what is overlooked on that drive is we had two false start penalties back-to-back that we actually overcame to even get into that position. So that speaks to the larger issue of penalties, which were an issue against Pitt, again, an issue last night, and pre-snap penalties. So just a lack of focus and discipline. So I was concerned about that, and I was fine with not taking the timeout up until I think we had 15 seconds left with two timeouts, and I felt like, okay, you're probably playing for the field goal. We could have taken a timeout, run a play, and we had been running the ball pretty well at that point because Cooper wasn't injured yet, and I felt like and Evans and Small had been running well. I felt like we could have used a timeout and run a play to get a little bit closer for that field goal and not. I think it was 47 yards, something like that. I felt like we could have used the timeout to get a little bit closer. I think that's asking a lot of your kicker to try to hit an almost 50-yarder as the clock's expiring on the road when you had an opportunity to get him a little bit closer. So that was the issue that I had on that drive. But I felt like, the pace that we ran at and it didn't allow Florida to sub. I mean, I think we liked our matchups and we had open guys and Hendon Hooker hit a couple of them. So I think it played out pretty well up until the end.
Austin Burlage at Austin_Burlage. Power T Tape. We do it every Monday to wrap up the Vols week that was. Thanks, buddy. And again, congratulations to you and your family. We're really happy for you guys.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you guys. Can't wait to see what the suit looks like next week, Buck.
It's going to look great. I'm going to New York. I got to look fly. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, see ya.
Yeah, the suit got some heat yesterday. I mean, the suit itself was heat. But, if we're talking about what I was wearing after a Titans game, as much as we're talking about the Titans game, actually, probably that's just me being self-involved. We'll talk about the Titans on the other side. I want to get into some situations that devolved for the Titans throughout the course of the game. Some injuries, some critical ones, and a unique situation, it seems, with the outside linebacking core, and more importantly, Bud Dupree. We'll tell you what that is and how that came to pass in yesterday's game, a win against the Colts. Coming up next, your phone calls as well. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Live interaction with other listeners while watching your favorite Zone shows. It's 104.5 The Zone TV live on YouTube and Twitch.
didn't get an illegal contact penalty down the field yesterday against the Colts, it would have made 3.5 on the season for him. I just went to the bathroom during the commercial break, and, as one does, scrolling through my Instagram stories or the people that I follow's Instagram stories whilst at the urinal. I believe that's still within the protocol as long as I wipe my phone down with wet wipes, as one does. But I was laughing because Ola Adeniyi has put on his Instagram story a text message that he received from the NFL, and I've since tweeted this out. He is getting randomly selected, or has been randomly selected, so he gets a text. It says his full first name, which I'm going to struggle to pronounce, Ola Sukanami, which is a cool first name if I could do it without butchering it. But Ola, this is blank with drug-free sport. You've been randomly selected for a PED test today, September 27th. The window will be open between 9:30 and 12:30. Please bring an ID to testing, blah, 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 blah. So basically, Ola Adeniyi's getting a random drug test after having 2 good games back-to-back as a core special teams player historically through 4 seasons in the NFL, which I think is pretty funny. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We're going to talk about Bud Dupree's circumstance and why it's impressive that the Titans pass rush is doing what it is without him yesterday, without him playing a single snap yesterday. Oh, I was just about to go to the caller about Jackrabbit, but he didn't. He dropped off. So we'll talk about Bud now. So the Bud situation is this. They have 46 active spots on an NFL game day roster. Right, 53 active roster throughout the course of the week, 46 game day. So you are incredibly selective with the 46 players that you call up on game day. So when Bud Dupree, and Mike Vrabel spoke about this a little bit on Friday in his press conference with the media before the game against the Colts on Sunday, he had talked a little bit about, well, we're kind of still working through how we manage Bud Dupree's rehab and recovery situation off a torn ACL in December. We're still kind of figuring out and managing him on a day-to-day, week-to-week situational circumstances. So, he may be available at some points and he may not be available in some points. But what made yesterday particularly curious is that he was active. He was active against the Colts yesterday. And then as the game progressed, we're looking at least in the press box, we're looking at who's on the field. And this may have been discussed on the TV copy. I watched the TV copy on Game Pass back without sound, typically, and meaning no offense to the CBS broadcast crew yesterday. It's just I don't really feel that it helps me all that much in rewatching a 33-minute condensed version. So perhaps they did talk about it earlier in the broadcast than we were in the press box. But it got to a point in like the second quarter, or maybe the second half of the first quarter, where we're looking at how many snaps Ola is playing and being like, where the hell is Bud? Is Bud Dupree been in? Teron Davenport at ESPN, he pulls up the snap count, finds out that Bud has not played a single snap thus far and did not start the game, and progresses on without playing. He's just chilling there in his uniform without a helmet. Now, I asked Mike Vrabel about this, and I read you guys this quote earlier, and we would play you the audio, but it's not even worth the time to find it because I said, early in the week you talked about how you're still managing Bud, and is that the kind of circumstance that went into your decision today? And all Mike said was unavailable. He was there for an emergency. Well, it's rare that you use an active game day spot for a player who's not going to play. That's the whole reason why everybody who's not a starter plays on special teams, and even some starters play on special teams because of how valuable and how versatile you need those game day roster spots to be. But when you look at the fact that Derek Roberson was a scratch against the Colts yesterday, has not been practicing, has been dealing with injury, so he was unavailable. You have Ola, you have Harold, but outside of that, you have Rashad Weaver, who breaks his fibula, as Koharski reported yesterday. So already you're running perilously thin. So it's basically Harold and Ola or bust. And what Vrabel is telling you there is, he wasn't going to go unless we absolutely needed a body to go. And you hate for that to be the circumstance that your team finds itself in, which is a fine. Do we have the cash register sound yet?
No.
Bad job out of you.
Yeah.
That's on you. And that's on me to pay another fine for blaming you for something that's not really your fault. But that's the circumstance that the Titans were in at outside linebacker. Now, they do have another linebacker on the practice squad. I'm not entirely certain whether he's an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker. But that was a pretty curious situation yesterday. And the more interesting one is, of course, Julio Jones that we'll talk about coming up next at length. But I'm getting a lot of comments or getting a lot of questions about Josh Reynolds, who was also a scratch against Indianapolis yesterday. And I was told by people on the primetime show last night on A to Z Sports Primetime that the television broadcast was saying that Josh Reynolds was ruled out or inactive because he was dealing with illness. And that's apparently not the case, because I went back and looked at that situation, and it was determined that Josh Reynolds was a healthy scratch. So what people are saying, particularly somebody like, let's just take Carey, Buckshot Carey, in the chat on YouTube, who said should have kept Mason Kinsey over Josh Reynolds because it's not the first time he's been a scratch. He's been active for one game against Seattle. Now, with Josh Reynolds and Mason Kinsey, well, you have Mason Kinsey. He's on your practice squad right now. So if he was better than Josh Reynolds, an unhealthy Josh Reynolds or a recovering Josh Reynolds, you could have called him up and made him active for the game. But that was not the route that they chose to do. And in fact, they got production out of Nick Westbrook-Akina, out of Cam Batson, out of Jeremy McNichols, and of course, out of Chester Rogers. But when we come back, we'll talk about why they had to go to those depth guys. Because Julio Jones, basically from halfway through the third quarter on, didn't play. And the answer from Mike Vrabel yesterday after the game as to why he did not play will intrigue you. We'll let you hear that sound coming up next. We'll also spend some time on Ryan Tannehill. Your phone calls are welcome as well. And don't forget, Mike Vrabel will speak to the media at 12:30. We'll carry that press conference live. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
Coming up tomorrow morning.
We go from Victory Monday to Tennessee Tuesday as we take a look at the Vols with Josh Ward of the Sports Animal in Knoxville.
And if you missed our interview with Titans linebacker Ola Denny, you have another chance to catch it.
You can listen to any part of the show by downloading the podcast.
Jay, you going to snipe more people tomorrow?
Moan, the question is, why wouldn't I snipe more people?
Jay Martin Ramon, tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
on my looking at Instagram stories in a commercial break at the urinal. And apparently, the debate has broken out. And Lucas, in fact, if we can put this on a poll at Buck Reising, if you would be so kind. Well, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this poll. Let me relate to you what I'm dealing with, because I'm being told by Alex McDuffie on YouTube that the phone, because basically my argument is that nobody under the age of 35 goes into the bathroom without their phone. I don't think this is a shocking statement to anybody. I don't think it's TMI. In fact, I think it's quite commonplace. But what Alex is saying to me is that if you're in the stall, it is acceptable. If you have your phone and are on your phone at the urinal, you might as well be an animal. Like, you might as well be less than human. So I wonder if that is indeed the case. Lucas, I'm leaving this up to you to be able to formulate an intellectually stimulating poll question off of that based on where you are or are not allowed to use your phone in the restroom. I find this to be fascinating.
I don't know that it's so much you're not allowed to use your phone in the restroom. It's that people just don't want to hear you talking about what you're doing in the restroom.
Well, grow up. I mean, what do you just think that whatever happens in the bathroom is completely off the grid?
Sacred.
It's just recused from commonplace
You heard Kendall
conversation.
Lamb.
Well, I did, but Kendall Lamb is talking about. I mean, he's sharing with us his straight up post practice.
It's true. He was very open about it.
Bowel movement regimen. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm simply saying that I had found a nugget to bring back to the show. I was working for the people, even whilst in my private moment at the restroom, at the urinal. And so now this has sparked great debate. But what has also sparked great debate is what is happening with Julio Jones, or what did happen, or rather what didn't happen with Julio Jones in the second half of the Titans' win against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I will be curious to know, and I hope that somebody asks this question for me, because obviously I won't be able to attend in person, but I would like Mike Vrabel to clarify his comments about Julio Jones, because Mike Vrabel ran out there in a one-possession game against the Indianapolis Colts and had this collection of skill position talent that was not A.J. Brown and that was not Julio Jones. Hell, it wasn't even Derrick Henry. Because A.J. Brown, as you saw, was ruled out rather quickly in the second half of that game. In fact, he didn't even come back out of the locker room in his uniform. He was in shorts and a T-shirt or a hoodie at the conclusion of that game. And A.J. Brown has also posted a message to fans on Instagram basically saying, it's been a tough couple of weeks. He was ruled out with a hamstring injury, so a close situation, or a situation to monitor closely. But with Julio was basically sidelined from halfway through the third quarter on. And at times he would have his helmet, at times he wouldn't have his helmet. All I know is that for the majority of that, he was standing next to Bud Dupree, who, of course, was active, was dressed out, but did not play a snap. Now, Vrabel did not expand upon the situation with Bud Dupree, but when asked about why Julio Jones wasn't in the game late in a one-possession game against a divisional rival, this is what the Titans head coach had to say.
I just think that as this thing, played out, just trying to manage, where he's at and, understand that what the type of game that we thought the end of the game was going to be. And those guys were going in there and trying to, dig safeties out. So we'll keep looking at those guys, and, there's a lot of guys that are, going to need some rest this week. A lot of guys, they played hard, a physical game, and hopefully we can be ready to go when we head up to New York.
So, and that's Mike Vrabel speaking to us yesterday in postgame. So, am I misunderstanding him? Did he say that he load managed Julio Jones in a game?
It sounded like a roundabout way to say that. Either that is either what happened, or that's the point he's trying to convey to maybe mask something else. Sandy, a caller called in, she didn't want to be on the air in hour one, said maybe Julio made the tackle on a Ryan Tannehill interception. Maybe he got a little dinged up when he made that tackle. I mean, people will start to try and find these reasons, but I think I believe him. He said digging out safeties in terms of what they were doing on offense there late in the game.
With the wide receivers,
yeah,
right. You're asking them to block.
Keeping it on the ground, just trying to ice the game at that point. I mean, with all the injuries you've had, obviously frustrating for Vrabel as he slammed the door on the way out of the presser.
Not a happy camper.
I could see the load management aspect of it being a real thing late in the game. Because you're not throwing the ball around. You don't need Julio to make plays in the red zone in that part of the game. You're just trying to end the game, and you're digging out safeties, which you think you can do with Nick Westbrook-Akina and Jeremy McNichols and Chester Rogers.
I'm not saying that I don't believe Mike Vrabel. Because then I started to do the thing that Sandy is talking about where, like, in pregame, I'm watching Julio Jones pregame, right? Right after they come out, when they announce the players, and we'll talk about the public address announcer here in just a second because I know that is it's been a point of contention on this show. And I tweeted something yesterday about the press box PA guy that everybody turned into the stadium PA guy. So clearly there are some sore feelings about that, much to Lucas's delight. But
I get tweets about it. Jack Gentry tweeted me, Lucas Pandico would never.
About how bad the PA announcer was in Nissan Stadium yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't. I'm not in there during the games.
We have a press box PA guy who's different than the regular. Anyway, let me not get distracted. We'll save this for before the polls. But it's not that I don't believe Mike Vrabel. I just thought it was interesting. And I honestly, if he is being honest, and we have no reason to indicate that he's not being honest, I just think it's an interesting, for all the things that Mike doesn't say, I think that's a fascinating admission to say, yeah, we load managed Julio Jones in the second half of a game, of a one-possession game, where we're trying to beat a division rival. And, why should he not think that way for all the stuff that he says about, hey, we expect whomever is on our roster to perform on game day. And the method that they went about winning that game speaks to that. 3 touchdown passes for Ryan Tannehill, 1 to NWI, who is, of course, now wide receiver 1 in the absence of Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, Chester Rogers, and Jeremy McNichols. So fringe guys, depth guys, roster guys, making plays that win you games. So Mike Vrabel clearly to his core believes that, okay, our guys should be able to be competent enough to go out there and win, even if the talent disparity is such that, yeah, instead of Chester Rogers, I'm coming for your neck with Nick Westbrook-Akina. What do you think about that, Frank Reich? Take some of that. That Mike Keith's line. But to hear that, just to hear that aloud, and I had to go back and, like, after the press conference, listen to it back. I'm like, did he just say that he load managed in real time? Is this the NBA? And honestly, you're good with it if you're a Titans fan because of the result. But you're also looking at that and saying, well, what's going on with Julio Jones and why does he need to be load managed in real time?
The reality is you load manage him throughout the season, right? Throughout practice. You just don't see it come to fruition during games. But in that, if the situation calls for it, why not load manage your star receiver?
Listen, I'm for it. I think that more coaches should be comfortable making that decision. And, of course, Mike Vrabel infinitely going to side in that regard with maintaining the health and safety of the players first and foremost. So we'll talk, basically, is the audience good with that? Let me ask the audience this, and we'll take your phone calls on this coming up next before Mike Vrabel speaks to the media, and hopefully we'll clarify, and maybe he doesn't need to clarify. Maybe that's just the answer. But for Titans fans, what are you most concerned with? A.J. Brown's hamstrings, Julio Jones not playing the majority of the second half against the Colts, or Bud Dupree being active but not playing a snap against Indy yesterday? Which of those 3 situations concerns you the most? Now, the answer is probably all 3. But of them, which concerns you the most? 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Reising. It's 1045 The Zone.
Hear every Titans play with Mike Keith and Coach Dave McGinnis on The Call.
Touchdown, Titans! Your home for Titans football.
1045 The Zone.
managing Julio Jones in real time. And I don't think it's that. I mean, that's literally what I heard him say. Now, maybe somebody will ask him for clarification on that to that point, and all of the media people who are texting me today saying that it's a ridiculous thing that we've just stated should probably ask him to clarify that, and it will be to no avail because it probably has something to do with a nick or a bruise, and God help Mike Vrabel if he has to answer another injury question because he didn't. There was a handful of them yesterday. He didn't want anything to do with it. But which of those three unique ones, most concerns you for the Titans long term? Not just against the Jets, because you can't sleep on any NFL opponent, and the Titans have lost to more unlikely upsets than an 0-3 New York Jets team, although this one would be tough to do. But which concerns you the most among those three? Because, of course, they are all three critical in that regard. 615-737-1045. Let's lead off with Alvin, who's in Nashville and wants to weigh in. What's up, Alvin?
Yeah, I want to know, do you think he was load managing Julio because of A.J. Brown injury to make sure he have a number one on the field next week?
I think that's that's basically what it sounded like he said. And I don't know, again, we asked him, and that was his response. So to me, that would indicate that, yeah, they're trying to preserve as many healthy bodies as they can throughout the course of the season, and they know with Julio that his health is the most tenuous thing about him, right? It's how many games will Julio Jones actually play for the Titans this year. And that's, coming off a season-ending injury, and that even as he is still a spectacular athlete at an advanced age, you want to be careful with him because you're trying to make him last. He's not gonna be the deciding factor that wins you the Super Bowl if you do in fact make it that far, but he can be a piece to the puzzle that helps put you over the top, of course. So in saying that, I really do believe that he felt confident enough or felt out of necessity enough to go, all right, Chester, Batson, NWI, let's ride. And just that collection of names together strikes fear into the hearts of nobody. But also, Tannehill threw 2 touchdown passes to 3 of those guys yesterday. So, however we feel about Mike Vrabel and cliches and got to play better, got to coach better, and what he says, next man up, and we're going to play with the guys that we have out there, and the expectation is of all of them, if they're on our active roster, to perform. That's speaking truth to power in regard to that yesterday in a one-possession game against a divisional opponent who you have terrible history against in front of your home fans. Now, maybe all of that is stacked up so much and it's just an outright injury that Mike doesn't want to talk about. But there was no injury designation given on Julio Jones. And they always give out injury designations in the press box, right? A.J. Brown, questionable to return with a hamstring yesterday. Who was ruled out for the Colts? Kwity Paye, early in that game, the defensive end, ruled out for the game. They give us those designations in the press box. None such injury designation was given to us about Julio Jones. So, and it's not like the press box PA guy was struggling. Apparently not more than the real PA guy. But we'll talk about that after Mike Vrabel speaks to the media. 615-737-1045. Which of those situations most concerns you? Let's go to Zach in Brentwood, who wants to talk about A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Bud Dupree. What's up, Zach?
John, all three, but definitely Julio is the least concerning, I would say, because, what's the worst-case scenario to load managing a star receiver? He doesn't get great numbers. We maybe lose a game. But the best...
Yeah, some poor fantasy football players shaking their fist at the sun is the worst-case scenario.
Right, but but the worst-case scenario, if you do overplay him, is we don't have Julio Jones to the playoffs. So load managing him when we're in control of a game is not concerning to me. Bud Dupree is a little concerning, but with Ola doing what he's doing and Landry playing well, we have guys there. The most concerning is definitely A.J. Brown. He's starting to feel legitimately injury-prone, which is unfortunate with such a talented guy. He had all those drops in week 1. It feels like because he's not getting enough practice time because we always give him time off for all these injuries. So I would definitely put A.J. Brown at number 1, and I'll hang up. Thanks.
Thanks for the call, Zach. And drops in week 2, not week 1. Important to note. But this is so A.J. Brown took to Instagram, and this is the way of the the way of the athlete, given how big the social media followings are nowadays, and they can circumvent, traditional media, which is fine, even though it's probably going to cost me and Lucas our jobs one day. Regardless, A.J. Brown on Instagram. God makes no mistakes. He does everything for a reason. It's ups and downs with this game, and I'm man enough to say it's been a rough couple of weeks. I don't pretend, not even for this app. Every year, everyone deals with stuff, and we find a way to handle it and move forward. You can say whatever about me, but understand I play for the man above. He's my only audience. The smoke will clear. Well, he's not your only audience because there's 67,000 people in attendance to watch you play football yesterday. And listen, I'm not here to dismiss A.J. Brown's belief in a higher power and playing for that sole purpose, but also, I think it can be both genuine, because I believe A.J. Brown at his core to be a genuine individual. But it's also fair to say, well, yeah, that's an easy thing to put in an Instagram post without fielding questions about it. But this is the conversation about traditional media versus social media and how athletes circumvent questions that they may not want to take about their performance and instead control their own message, which is their right. That's how media works nowadays. 615-737-1045. Let's get Rob in Nashville in before we go to Mike Vrabel's press conference live from St. Thomas Sports Park. What's up, Rob?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I would have to say, A.J. Brown, but Julio, I feel like, people want to see one of them out there. I mean, that's what people coming out there to see. So, you want to give the fans, something good to see out there, excite them, keep them excited. So, I didn't like the fact that Vrabel did take Julio out because, you got to give the fans something. They come down there.
Wait, Rob. They gave him a win. What do you mean? They won.
Let me give you an example. That's like, people back in the day when they went to see Chicago Bulls. Who did they go to see?
Jordan.
It didn't matter who won. They went to see Michael Jordan. So people paying their good money out. So, hey, you got to do something to keep the seats packed. You got to keep them butts in the seats. So you got to give them something to be excited for. You can't take the product off the field and say, okay, guys, this is it. Just come down here to see some boring. I'm not calling the Titans boring because they got, other players on there that's exciting. But, Julio is, he has brought a whole lot of excitement, I think, to Nashville, to the football stadium. So, you got to keep the fans excited. You can't take both of them off the field. That's all I got, guys. Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate the call, Rob. You know who doesn't give a bleep about that?
Yeah.
Can you guess?
Not even an iota.
Mike Vrabel. I need Rob in a press conference with that question. Hey, Mike, I paid good money.
It's hard to fathom how little Mike Vrabel cares about who people showed up to see.
He could not possibly give a bleep less. Now, maybe that hurts your feelings as a fan, and also the team won the game yesterday. So,
if they could go 12-5, winning 3-0, he would do that.
I get what Rob is saying. I also think it's just completely irrelevant to the conversation because the conversation, yes, butts and seats are nice, but they're not showing up if Julio Jones is on a 16 team. Sorry, I don't know why math is that hard to do when it's only one extra game this year, but I struggled. So Julio Jones on an Atlanta Falcons team does not put butts in the seats. I have been to the Falcons Stadium when the Titans have played the Falcons and Julio Jones played for the Falcons. And you know how few butts in seats there were just because Julio played? No, there's nobody at the games because the Falcons sucked since that Super Bowl. And since then, they have spiraled as a franchise. The team doesn't win. The fans don't show. It's not just about Julio. Now, maybe early in the season, it's about some of the hype that Julio brings, but ultimately it's about the product on the field. And Rob, I feel like, is one of the few people. Maybe there are other people that feel that way, but I can't imagine there's many more that feel that way. 615-737-1045 is the number as we await Mike Vrabel, Titans head coach, and his press conference at the podium, which we'll carry a little bit of here live. Let's squeeze Chuck in before Mike takes the stand. What's up, Chuck?
Hey, Buck. I'm kind of on Vrabel's wavelength too. I don't give a bleep who he's got in there as long as we're winning. I mean, I think they're doing a hell of a job of coaching, especially these last 2 games. So if he felt like Julio didn't need to be blocking out there on the running plays, that's fine. I mean, to me, I think, we know Vrabel's a lot like Belichick, and Belichick's the same way. He's going to put on the field who he thinks in that situation is going to get us what we need to get. And you got to admit, Westbrook-Ikini and Batson and everybody yesterday, Chester Rogers, they were producing. So, I guess we're, as fans, when are we ever going to be satisfied? Take a win, let's move on to New York.
Chuck, never. Never is the answer to that question. I appreciate the calls. Hey, Lucas, I know you're busy, but if you can mid-call rack somebody, look at you multitasking. It's a great point. I mean, listen, the job of the fan, the nature of fandom is it's like coaching, right? You're never satisfied. If you won the game but it didn't look pretty, you want to know why it didn't look pretty. And listen, that's the same as sports media. I'm literally paid to give my opinion and be critical of things that I see and that I watch. But from that standpoint, you also have to say, well, can you tell your players who aren't Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, hey, man, you're not talented enough to be out on the field while one of our star players who we're going to need later can't go. Or maybe we don't think it's in his best interest to go. So we're going to go ahead and not run you out there. We'll run the injured player out there. Take Carson Wentz, for example. You think it was in the Colts' best interest to play Carson Wentz yesterday? Now, I can't speak to the talent of Jacob Eason. I know that they clearly weren't impressed with Jacob Eason enough or Brett Hundley enough to not run a broken, or not a broken ankle, but 2 sprained ankled Carson Wentz out there who couldn't. He looked like me in the pocket. God help him. And Frank Reich called a really, really good game. I thought under the circumstances, Wentz did as much as he could without any kind of mobility as a sitting duck. But, yeah, I mean, think about the Titans. Jarrell Casey is a star. Now, he's not a wide receiver, but how many people showed up just to watch Jarrell Casey play on Sunday? No, Titans attendance struggled because the team wasn't winning while Jarrell, not throughout the course of Jarrell's tenure, but for a good portion of it. This is the same thing. You could say the same thing about Chris Johnson. Anyway, Mike Vrabel's at the podium. Perhaps we will get some clarification on load management and things of that nature. Live from St. Thomas Sports Park, let's hear from the head coach.
Oh, they're fine. That stadium's been through a lot.
Mike, you said Julio was, sounded like you were saying he was a bit of load management almost. John said when he brought him here, he loved the way that he dug out safeties, and you did throw the ball after you stopped playing him. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure.
About
Excited. Let's get to the game, and then we'll address that. Excited about the way we finished. We knew that this was going to be a battle. We knew that this was going to be a 4-quarter football game. We executed in some critical situations. Defense was great on third down, much better on the red zone, and you can see that those are big factors in helping us win. We got to take care of the football. That's going to cost us. We got to start turning the football over. Our right tackle can't lead our team and cause fumbles. Our special teams started to compete. There were some cool opportunities that Chester, catching the football, guys blocking. Chester averaged, 14 yards a punt return. So that was something that, was huge in the game. We ran the football at times, but then things got to just have to be cleaner. And then, as it relates to your question, about Julio, guys go through games, guys get tight, and I felt like it was in the best interest of our football team and everybody involved that he be available in an emergency situation at that point in time. There hasn't been, other than one admitted, I would say, lapse in judgment in the first game, which everybody would agree on, myself, the team, Julio. There hasn't been one situation where I was disappointed. He's played physical. He came back, played great last week, played physical yesterday, and that's where we were.
You say tight, Mike.
Again, guys get tight throughout the game. So we're not physically tight, yeah. So, listen, guys, this is going to be the least I talk about injuries. So that's what we do. This is not an issue with his performance. This isn't an issue with anything other than me making a decision and saying, hey man, let's see if we can get through this and survive and win this football game and see if it's a long season.
Injuries. Rashad Weavers, it looked like he may be out for a while.
Yes.
Did taking Chester off kickoff returns help him with punt returns, you think?
Probably help him not get killed, but maybe. He's done a nice job for us. The one that he punted, the one that they punted, their gunners went both to the other side, and sometimes when you have these punters that kick these boomerangs, which we identify as those ones that go across the field, you try to read the gunners. And so both gunners, went in that direction. So he thought the boomerang. And so I don't know if the punter, did something other than what they normally do. But Chet went over there and fair caught that one that would have probably rolled down there inside the 10. I thought that was a great play. Thought it was well schemed and well executed on the first punt. That looked really close on the sidelines. We were going to try to plan on returning that and blocking it up. And Chet had a lot of trust in those guys because, usually those plus 50 punts, guys are down there in your face. And so that was a huge play. And, we got some good yardage out of the punt return. We just got to start going with this kickoff return a little bit.
It wasn't the opening kick, but you had a guy running on late on an early special teams play. Seems like that's happening once in a while.
When else did it happen? Preseason?
I'm thinking there was another time.
Well, when you tell me what it is, then I'll answer the question.
Well, what happened with the one yesterday?
Jeremy was probably frustrated that he didn't do a great job on the third down play and came off the field, I'm sure. But, that's just a speculation. Proud of Jeremy, the way he came back and protected and stuck his nose up in there and then, had a great route. Ryan gave him a great ball and, caught a huge touchdown there at the end. So that's a good reminder to all of us that you can start the game a certain way and be frustrated and maybe not do the best that you could and then come back and late in the game make a huge play, which I was proud of him for.
What about the pass rush? I mean, maybe from Ola and then maybe Harold, who only maybe had a half sack, but it seemed like he impacted the game with a lot of pressures. Did that stand out to you?
Yeah, it did. I thought Harold played extremely hard. I thought Ola continues to help us. And Harold's impacting the game. He's playing hard and he's trying to get around the quarterback. And I know that, the ball will start to come out. He's going to start, continue to keep reaching, trying to find the football when he gets around the quarterback and hope that it comes out and the numbers start to reflect, maybe what his effort in his, not his production certainly, but his performance.
That's Mike Vrabel. Now, the press conference is going to continue, but I think we got at least for the audience and for the purposes of our conversation. So what he's saying about Julio is he got tight. It's a long season, and they made a decision in the best interest of the team to basically sit him. Now, load management, I guess you can argue if you want to that load management is technically a predetermined situation, right? Where you go into a game knowing that you're going to stagger the workload. So maybe that's not the correct term, but is he not being managed in game in the way that Mike Vrabel just described? So, and it's only, I'm saying this for the people who are texting me, arguing me, most of whom were at the press conferences, so they should probably pay attention to the press conference instead of arguing with me about this via text. Idiots.
I mean, Austin Stanley just tweeted, what I get from this is Mike Vrabel thought the Titans could beat the Colts without Julio, so he load managed Julio.
Thank you.
An in-game decision to load manage Julio Jones because they thought they could win the game.
Can I rack myself? Thank you. Polls next.
The Titans made a huge statement in the AFC South against the Colts.
Well, the Colts gave the Titans all they had, but the Titans had more. Your final score, Tennessee 25, Indianapolis 16, as the Titans get it done again.
Talk about it all day on Reaction Monday. on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
wrong term? Is that why Rexrode is so butthurt the way that he's bitching about this? I mean, what he's saying to me on Twitter is much more polite than what he's saying to me via text.
Well, the intricacies of what does or doesn't mean load management is a conversation I don't want to dive into.
He managed Julio Jones snaps in a game. I don't care if it was predetermined or because something happened in the game. That's what is the purpose of this argument?
The answer to the argument is if it was a situation like in Seattle when you're down or you're tied and you're trying to go win a game rather than preserve a lead and playing conservatively like they did at the end of – they ran the ball a lot on those last two drives. We need to go see what the run-pass count was. But would Julio Jones have been out there if it was a different scenario? I think that would answer your question.
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever. I don't care about the purposes of this argument. If Rex Jones wants to fight on the internet about being right, then fine. I just think it's ridiculous. Speaking about fighting on the internet about things, so I tweeted yesterday before we get on the polls. And Lebowski just says in the YouTube chat, it depends on what the meaning of the word is. I hate it. I hate it here. Every day I hate it here more and more. But I tweeted yesterday about the press box public address guy. All right, so there's the voice that you hear of Nissan Stadium that Lucas auditioned for and was slighted for and didn't get. That's a different guy than is talking to the media in the press box, giving us, how many yards the play went for, what who made the tackle, who caught the pass, who was targeted on the incompletion, on and on and on, right? So I tweet something about the press box PA guy because he's struggling. He's mispronouncing Ola's name. He's calling Michael Pruitt Muckhole, like meh. Just kind of meh. Muckhole. Not Michael, but meh. God help Bobby Okereke, who he, just for the life of him, I heard it pronounced 6 different ways. And he's also said, he also called Carson Wentz, I think, like it wasn't Colin Wentz, but it was something like that. Just an egregious mistake. So I tweet this about the press box guy. And then all of a sudden, people start responding to that poll, but it's about the stadium announcer, about the new voice of Nissan Stadium, the job that Lucas Panzica was slighted for. So I guess he had I don't hear any of it in the press box, but I guess he had a rough outing back-to-back after, getting Taylor Lewan viciously booed because he was announcing back in at left tackle.
Read the room.
So I guess he was not having a good time yesterday. But you get tweets about this, yes?
Yeah, I'll get people tweeting me like Lucas would never. And look, I wish the guy all the best. I am very happy with what I am doing.
Do you?
Yes, I am very happy with what I am doing on Titans game days.
No, you sound like you're settling. You sound like you're equivocating. That's all I hear in your voice. So I guess the question is, do we turn? I mean, we've already turned heel, right? Because I've already, and I don't know this person. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I believe Matt Rogers is his name. I'm sure he's a nice man, and I'm sure he's trying his hardest to be good at that job. And that's tough. I did press box PA, not like stadium PA, for Vanderbilt years ago. And it was a struggle for a while, especially when you're working with duplicates in the NFL, and now all of that exists. Anyway, what I will say to you is you don't have to root against him, but I think I'm going to. Is that wrong?
You do you, man.
Polls.
Not now, Jenny. I'm on the radio. Buck Reising gave me a job. Said something about a poll update. Hope that wasn't at that club where you became a folk singer. Anyway, Buck Reising's producer and correspondent has the final poll update. I'm not a smart man, but I know who Lucas Panzica is.
What was Mike Vrabel most upset about yesterday? Injuries, turnovers, or the fact that it was a close game? 70% say turnovers, 25%. Injuries, 5% close game.
Oh, we should have put penalties on there because he was not happy about the penalties, especially the ones. I think it was 3 for 24 that allowed the Colts to continue their drives. So, we probably should have given the audience D, all of the above, because he was sassy post-game.
I think it was the turnovers, though. I mean, you're talking about a fumble inside the Colts' 5-yard line, and he said after the game, it's almost impossible to win a game when you turn the ball over like they did.
He wasn't happy about it.
Did Dan Mullen compliment the Vols out of pity on Saturday? 63% say yes.
Yeah. We'll spend some more time on that tomorrow because I want to talk about what happened in the SEC over the weekend and why I'm declaring myself an Arkansas fan for the year. which, of course, as we mentioned, means they'll lose all of the games moving forward after upsetting A&M. But certainly the equivalent, and I'm sure it's a small minority of the fan base that I saw like equivocating, being like, oh, look at how nice Dan Mullen was about this team under Coach Heupel as opposed to Coach Pruitt a year ago, and how much better does that make you feel? And then you look at the fact that they didn't even cover wherever you got it. I got it at 18.5. Some people got it at 20. It's just that seems like a bit of a loser mentality to me.
What did you like most about how the Titans won yesterday? Puka says they didn't give up. Farsender says depth on both sides of the ball, playing and competing with the twos. Goody says Christian Fulton looked real good. What I didn't like was Buck's Barney impression with that suit.
I looked hot. I'll say it. If nobody else will say it for me, I'll say it. In fact, I've gotten many complimentary tweets about my outfit yesterday. So all of those haters, like the Taylor Lewan bussing with the boys video, perhaps I'll have my own suit-hating contingent rant at some point. Or maybe that's what I just did.
Aaron says he likes Ryan Tannehill's poise. JP says, honestly, that we have a kicker who makes field goals.
Yeah, that's big. How nice was it that the thing that we're not talking about today is the kicker? And really, he made the game. I mean, I guess it wasn't the game-winning kick. It was the game-sealing kick to put that out of reach for the Colts
But
late.
we're not talking about him.
We're not talking about Randy, even though I tweeted it when he made the field goal, Fat Randy forever. And I promise I'll stop that.
What concerned you most about how the Titans won yesterday? Puka says injuries and mental mistakes. Karen says too many turnovers on offense, which led to 10 points by the Colts and a lack of defensive turnovers. Rube says, let's not concern ourselves with victories. And Jamie says injuries and turnovers.
Yeah, I would not. The turnover thing is the most concerning, right? At some point, turnover differential isn't everything, but it helps you win football games. And you can't be the second worst team in the sport right now and expect to continue the trajectory that you're on. Those the polls?
Those are the polls.
Very good. Fun show. If you missed any of it, check it out. Buck Reising Show in your favorite podcast
app.
Did
Spencer rate us?
Spencer rated us an 8.1.
Nice.
On YouTube. Well, no, nice would be 6.9. Regardless. Lane and Mickey up next.
Coming up today on the 3HL.
I love Monday shows on 3HL. We get to recap everything that happened over the course of the weekend. Mike Keith, the voice of the Titans, talking about Titans Colts.
And to help us recap what happened in college football around the nation, and especially in the SEC, got our guy Chris Lowe coming on.
Buck Reising also in the 5 o'clock hour. We've got you covered wall to wall.
Am I sad or glad on Monday?
I don't know.
Stay tuned.
Today, starting at 3 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.